Marianne, it's wonderful to meet you. Thank you for taking a minute out today.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Joe. Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
So am I. Where are you located on the planet?
I am in the western Chicago suburbs,
Okay.
Aurora, Illinois, home of Wayne's World.
Okay, excellent. That's right. That's right. Well, I'm in Kansas City, Missouri, in the middle, kind of in the same quadrant. So it's great to meet you. I'm looking forward to getting into self-talk, your life as a coach and a trainer and a speaker. And to begin our journey, we're on the 5-year anniversary of COVID. And I'm curious of living through that area of the unknown of our realities. How much of that going through that has reverberated into your work and what you do today?
The pandemic, what happened through the pandemic? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, just how you got through that time period and how it may have lasted into now, things that are new now that were a part of that period.
I would say for my individual coaching business, it has actually been a positive because prior to the pandemic, I was doing a lot of work in Zoom, like we're doing now, and working with clients across the country. And a lot of people weren't familiar with the platform and the possibility. And now people are very comfortable with it, familiar with it, and oftentimes prefer it. So that's an easier shift. I think what might be lingering in a challenging way is this sort of reaction to fear and uncertainty. And that was probably one of the greatest times of uncertainty for people. And so it did tend to trigger a lot of emotions that went along with that. And I'm having more and more conversations around the topic of change.
Yeah. So let's get into exactly what you do on a daily basis. And to do that, I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of kids, fifth graders. It's career day. And one of the curious kids in the back of the room is like, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer him?
Yes, such a great question because I have a godson. So I've actually been in this situation. So,
Okay.
he's asked me, "What do you do?" And I say, "You know what? I get to stand up in front of people and talk to them about how to be great leaders."
That's beautiful. And that's exactly what they need to know. So let me ask you this. When you were in that position, when you were in the fifth grade, what did you want to be when you grew up? What was your ideal life?
So when I was in the fifth grade, I really didn't do a lot of dreaming like that. And I'm happy to get into kind of my background and my story and what led me to where I am today. And part of my childhood and growing up was that. But truth be told, I didn't do a lot of dreaming and imagining about what I wanted to be when I grew up back then. I was struggling with a lot of what we're now talking about self-talk, but going through some, just challenging times and really just trying to survive and get through them.
So let's go back to your childhood. Where were you born and raised, and what were some of these foundational elements that
Yeah.
ultimately have led to where you're at?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. So what I would say, I'll kind of start with the end in mind of where I am today, and I'm working with leaders, and I'm helping them be their best. And oftentimes they're showing up with so much self-doubt and uncertainty and lack of confidence, which is how it sort of led to this topic of self-talk and giving them tools to overcome that. And the book has so many tools and stories and lessons about how leaders have applied these tools, but it also includes how I discovered these tools. And when I was 9 years old in the fourth grade, on my way to school one day, I got called home from school. And I went home, skipped up the stairs, and there was my dad. He was sitting in a chair across from me with his arms stretched out. And I walked up to him and he wrapped his arms around me and we were eye to eye. I was standing, he was sitting, and he said three words that forever changed my life: Mommy's in heaven. And in that moment, all of these questions started going through my mind. Why me? Why is this happening now? Who's going to take care of me? And what's going to happen to me? And those questions and that self talk continued. It was valid at the time. But oftentimes, our self talk and stories from a young age, they stick with us and we carry them into adulthood and they no longer serve us. But there was a lot of chaos that ensued in my life after that. Everyone was just trying to figure out a new life. And at around age 11, actually, age 11 is when I first remember crying in my bed night after night, God, please let me die in my sleep. And that's the first time I remember experiencing suicidal depression. And over the next several years, every decision I made was just to make the bad feelings go away. And I think that's true for all of us. We're in the workplace, we're making decisions because we either want to avoid a feeling, we don't want the project to go wrong, we don't want to feel fear, we want to get a feeling, we want to feel fulfilled or excited. So I tried everything, and I tried workaholism, and that didn't work. I tried alcoholism, and that definitely didn't work. And so over those years, I did so much research. I read all the books, I did all the research, and ultimately led me to the tools that I share in the book and where I am today. And changing my self talk changed every other outcome of my life.
So who was that hero that helped you get to this point in your life?
I have two heroes. I am so fortunate to have, um, kind of these interventions in my life. Well, actually, I can think of three now. There are many. One is an AA sponsor. She was an attorney, and she really taught me the importance of owning my role in every situation. Another is a therapist who was with me, probably the constant in my life and the closest thing to a mother I've ever known. She was with me for 25 years, saw the good, the best of me, and the worst of the worst of me, and never gave up on me.
So let me ask you this, of people that have overcome inspiring figures that exist in the world, if you can meet one of them that might help you on your journey, and maybe you could just talk to them for a minute or meet them, who would that be?
Inspiring figures of the world that are here today.
Yeah, well, it could be the ghosts. We could go to the ghost or someone that's alive.
Mm. There are so many. That's really, it's really, boy, sculpting down to the bare bones on that one. I'm going to say somebody that's no longer with us, somebody that was in my life for many years and recently passed away, and his name is Dan Miller. He was the author of a book called 48 Days to the Work You Love. But I learned so many life lessons about overcoming, about mindset, about how to show up in the world in a way that stands out and with a heart of service.
So how do you balance all of this out? You're helping people. You're taking on the responsibility of helping leaders get to a better place. You're dipping into some heavy stuff, but you have a soul. You have a life you need to protect and evolve into. How do you balance that? What gets you up? What's the motivator every day?
So one of the motivators for me is my godson. He's not so little anymore. He's actually going to be 15. But that is a big motivator for me. That inspires me to want to show up as my best in every area of life. And so it does mean career and business. It also means finances. It also means physical. I want to stay physically fit and healthy. I want to keep up with that kiddo and chase him around. And I want to be a good example. And so I would say, there's an old, very popular sort of motivational speaker, Zig Ziglar, if you've ever heard that name, but he talks about the spokes of the wheel. And so we've got personal development, professional development, financial health, physical health. All of those spokes are important to me. And I'm very protective of my time and making sure that I'm feeding and fueling all of those areas.
So let me ask you this. If you had a dream tonight and you ran into a much younger version of you, say 18 years old, and you could give that version of you a piece of advice based on this life you've lived, the wisdom you've accumulated, what advice would you give that young version of you?
Be true to yourself, even if and especially if that answer looks different from what everyone else is doing.
Yeah.
I spent so many years, Joe, well, if they're doing it, that must be the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And that's the leaders I'm talking to
Yeah.
all day long. It's the same thing. Well, they're doing it. This is what I should do. And that's typically not the best path.
Yeah.
And when you start to follow the path that you know is right for you, all bets are off.
Yeah. What's the best advice you've ever gotten?
The best advice I've ever gotten. A lot of this is in the book. I would say, own your role. Own your role. When I first met that AA sponsor, she said, Marianne, I want you to make a list of all the people who've ever wronged you. And I thought, I kind of like this exercise. This sounds like a lot. I'm ready for this. And I did completed that activity, and she really didn't seem nearly as impressed as I thought she should be. And it was a long list. And then she said, now next to every one of those names and situations, I want you to write your role in the situation. I did not like that activity very much. But what I ultimately learned, what she was teaching me, is that I always have a choice in every situation.
Yeah.
And as long as I don't believe I have a choice and it's someone else's fault or there's nothing I can do or it's out of my control, that's a very disempowering place to be. But if I can say that I play a role, that means I have a choice and I can choose a different role and ultimately change the outcome.
So what's the biggest risk that you've taken in life?
The biggest risk that I have taken in life, I took a big risk when I was it was decades ago. I left a job and I followed my heart and I opened a dance and fitness studio. And that was a big risk. And that one didn't turn out the way I wanted to. So I'll give you two examples. One that didn't turn out the way I wanted, and that was that one.
Yeah.
And a ton of life lessons from that. So even though it didn't turn out the way I wanted, it was great. The other one was when I graduated college, which is relatively locally here where I'm at. I landed a job in Duluth, Minnesota, which is an 8-hour drive and next stop North Pole. And I didn't know a soul. I just packed up my car, headed up north, and it just was this grand adventure. And it was a scary thing to do. And I did it, and it worked out very well.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. Let's say you walk into a room of everybody that you've either worked with, everybody that's gotten your book, clients that you've had over the years, and you swim through that crowd and go up to a podium, and you get to tell that group one fun thing about you, a fun story, something that would humanize you that they wouldn't realize. What would you tell that group of people?
That I used to be a hip hop dance instructor.
Right on.
I mean, look at me, Joe. We're on the video here. In fact, I led two teams of local youths here, small town kids. We weren't really dancers and we weren't athletes, certainly. And we went to the National Junior Olympics. And I mean, their names like Shaquille O'Neal and Dominique Dawes and Jackie Joyner Kersey, those are names that are associated with the Junior Olympics. And we took these kids of, this just kids that just hung out and liked music and dance, and they won gold medals in
Wow.
the National Junior Olympics.
Very cool. That's awesome. What a great story.
Yeah, I
So,
actually did a TED talk about that story. It really is like overcoming the odds. It was a
yeah.
great experience.
That is great. So let me ask you this. If everything that you've done and overcome and evolved into at this point, what are you ultimately the proudest of?
The book that I just wrote.
Yeah.
And I know this is going to sound a little bit grandiose, but it's the truth. So I will just say it. I feel like this is the reason I was put on this earth, was to write this book and bring this message into the workplace. I just delivered a 2-hour workshop on self-talk. And I mean, everyone was just clamoring. There were 50 plus leaders, and they were asking, when can you come back and do a 2.0 on this? Because it really is the root. We talk about the toxicity in the workplace and the gossip and the criticism and low engagement, low performance. And so much of it comes down to this root.
So if anyone out there is listening to this and they're curious, they see your book back there, we've talked about it a little bit, and they're on the fence and they're wondering if they should buy it. What are you going to tell them? What's your Twitter pitch right now to tell them to buy your book?
Yeah. We're having conversations all day long. We're having them with clients and customers and key stakeholders and maybe neighbors and family, all of the above. But the most important conversation that you're having is the one you're having with yourself. Your self-talk can either build you up or it can take you down. And this book has dozens and dozens of tools and practical examples of real life leaders and the way they've applied them to help people change their self-talk And listen, if people are on the fence about buying it, you can start reading it right away on my website. I've got free chapters. I'm giving away free chapters because that's how much I believe in the book. And I'm convinced that once people start reading, they'll want more.
So at the end of the day, everyone out there has a perception of you. Family, friends, clients, readers, everyone out there, but you run the show. What's your
Mhm.
perception of you? Who do you think you are?
You know, people have shared with me, especially when they hear my story, they can't believe it. They just see me. I'm professional. They'll say, "You're so put together. You've got it all together. You've got it all going on." And that's a piece of me. That is true. That is not untrue. But there are so many more pieces of the pie. I am a person that's been hurt and broken and, had to kind of scrape my knuckles on the ground and been through the ringer. And what I want people to know is if I have been able to go from point A to where I am now, point B, imagine the implications of the tools that I'm writing about and teaching about. Imagine the implication in the workplace for those tools and for people who, they don't have as long of a journey to take as I do.
So if anyone wants to pick up a copy of the book, or if they want to reach out, they have questions, they want to hire you, any of the good business, where do
Mm-hmm.
they go?
MarianneRenner.com/self-talk will take them right to all the resources for the book. There is a free workbook that they can download. They could start applying all the tools that are in the book or in the workbook. They can access that. They can download the free chapters and tons more if they're interested in learning more.
What do you like the best about living in Aurora?
My family.
Yeah,
This is where I'm from, and this is I'll promise you what it's not is the weather.
I get it.
But I just can't leave this region because I'm the youngest of 9 kids, by the way, Joe. I mean,
Wow.
my mom and dad had 9. I'm the baby, and so I have tons of nieces and nephews, and so many people, friends and family that I love around here.
It's wonderful. What a great story. Marianne, thank you so much. Thank you for your story. Thank you for your time, and best of luck with everything.
Thank you. It's been an absolute delight. I'm so grateful for the invitation.
Absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Hello, friends. Joe Dimino here. I just wanted to let you know that after 30 years or so, I have finally released my first book of poetry through the mighty Spartan Press here in Kansas City, Missouri. As the creator and host of both Neon Jazz Radio and the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino podcast, along with being a visual artist, I'm ready to embark on a new adventure and want you to be a part of it. You can get a copy online via Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and actually on the streets in Kansas City at the great Prospero's bookstore off 39th Street. You can also visit joedimino.com for links to the book, to more poetry, and everything in my world, including paintings. Thanks for all of the love and support over the years, and please dig the words.